Ishiro Honda once said that the tragedy of monsters is the fact that they are born too tall, too strong, and too heavy. And at least in the context of the films, he was right. These attributes have led to Godzilla having many disagreements with the Japanese military. But at least in the context of pop culture, these attributes have led to the opposite for Godzilla. They've allowed him to prosper and produce 28 movies. But I want to analyze this and discover what it truly is about Godzilla that attracts people to him and why he's been so endearing. And the only way to truly do that successfully is to review every Godzilla movie ever made. Some people might be angry, but regardless, welcome to Zazubaar's Godzilla Palooza. Greetings, soldiers of the Red Bamboo. I am Zazubaar, and welcome back to Godzilla Palooza. It's day 8, and before we get into this review of Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster, I have two things I need to apologize for, and they're both kind of connected. One, I don't own the DVD of Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster. I know, I said back when I started this series that I was going to try and get all the DVDs of all the Godzilla films so I can own both the Japanese and English cuts. But alas, I could not get my hands on the Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster DVD in time for this series. My DVD store was all out, and Amazon.com had one copy that was over $50, and I didn't think it was worth it. I did some research, and I found out what exactly was cut out. I'll touch on it a little bit. Basically, all that was changed was the opening of the film, which in the Japanese cut was one of the main characters, Rata, going to a maritime safety building, finding out about his brother, which in the English cut is changed to an edited scene from later in the film where Ebera sinks a ship, which is supposed to be his brother's boat, but actually it's his boat later in the movie, with a generic title sequence. The other cut of the film is for the Mystery Science Theater release of the film, which was just generic title cards with stock footage from the next film, Godzilla, Son of Godzilla, with music. That's the differences. I haven't seen the Japanese cut. I heard, aside from that, it's basically the same movie. The plot's the same. All the characters are the same. Basically, nothing was really cut out except for a few music cues. But otherwise, they're both the same, and I think I can still give an all-encompassing opinion on Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster just seeing the American version and doing the research I did. So I'm not going to be covering the Japanese cut in this review. I'm mainly going to be talking about the American cut, but believe me, I think my opinions will go to that as well. Believe me, the Japanese cut ain't no masterpiece, and neither is the American version. The second thing is the fact that there's not going to be any pictures in this review, and overall this review isn't going to be very visually appealing. I apologize, it's not editing laziness. Believe me, if I could, I would put stills just like I've been doing, but I can't because all I have is the VHS tape, so I was unable to get stills. So I apologize for that. It's only going to be posters and a few scanned pictures in this video. I apologize, but I had no power over the situation. So I apologize for those two things. Hopefully you guys will still enjoy this video just as hopefully you've been enjoying the series. So with all that out of the way, let's get on to reviewing Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster. The big opening thing that ultimately leads into why this is indeed one of the worst Godzilla movies ever made is that it wasn't written as a Godzilla movie. Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster was originally titled Operation Robinson Crusoe, and the script was written featuring King Kong fighting Ebirah in the Red Bamboo, not Godzilla. This was originally supposed to be the first draft of an adaptation of the cartoon series produced by Rankin Bass, The King Kong Show, which I've seen. It's awful. It's a cartoon series that was going on in Japan at this time, and it's terrible. Don't watch it. And this movie was supposed to be a live-action adaptation of it. Rankin Bass didn't like this script. They didn't think it was similar enough to the show for it to work, so they pulled the King Kong license and told Toho to do a better version of it. Toho didn't want to scrap this script because they didn't have a Godzilla movie planned for this year, and just figured that they'd release it as a Godzilla film in 1966 rather than a King Kong film, and instead of using Kong, just put Godzilla in Kong's place and just filmed it, which is the biggest problem with it. Otherwise, though, Toho made King Kong Escapes instead of this, and while it's more of a great adaptation of the cartoon series, that doesn't make that a great movie. We'll get to King Kong Escapes on ZMMR at some point. But back to Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster, this doesn't even kind of feel like a Godzilla movie, and there's a bunch of reasons for that. The big reason is, of course, as I just said, that this wasn't written as a Godzilla movie, and the fact of that not much was changed for bringing Godzilla to replace Kong. It's basically just Godzilla in the place of him, and they just shot the thing. So his characteristics are all messed up. A lot of the story points with him don't make any sense. But we'll get to that when we go into the plot. And overall, the tone does not feel like a Godzilla movie. It feels like a really crappy King Kong movie. So, with all that said, the last thing that makes this not feel like a Godzilla movie is the fact that this is the first time we've got a Godzilla film in a while that's not directed by Ishiro Honda. We had one before this with Godzilla Raids Again, and I critiqued it for that, and also I stated in that review that film didn't work on many levels because Honda wasn't involved. This film at least has a notable and somewhat good Japanese director with Jun Fukuda, who do a couple more Godzilla movies after this, including the next film. He's not even kinda as good as Honda, but he's not the worst Godzilla director ever. And the thing is that he doesn't like Godzilla, so when he's doing a Godzilla movie, you know, his not liking the franchise comes out in the fact that this doesn't feel like a Godzilla movie, and it doesn't feel very passionate. That's my other problem with this movie, is that it's a very phoned-in Godzilla film. Like, it just feels like, oh, we didn't have a movie this year, so here it is, and it's not very good. Jun Fukuda is a comedy director, and that definitely comes out in this film in that the human scenes aren't bad. We'll get into this into a little more detail, but he directs the comedy scenes quite well, and that shows that he's a good comedic director. But again, he doesn't like Godzilla. He's a good comedy director. He shouldn't be directing this movie, but whatever, fate happened. So this is a Jun Fukuda Godzilla film, and it's not good for that. I think we'll get a better Godzilla film from him in the next year, but we'll talk about that tomorrow. So with all that said, let's get into the plot of Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster. Basically what happens is that a Japanese man named Rata's brother goes missing at sea, and he wants to go search for him, and he convinces his two friends to go with him, and they need to get a boat so that way they can go looking for him. They enter a dance contest, which the prize of winning the dance contest is getting a sailboat. They lose the dance contest, and then they drive off, very much so unnerved by losing the dance contest. And then they drive by a harbor and see a bunch of boats. They get out just to presumably take a look, and they go on a boat called the Yalin, and they go to look around, and the place is fully stocked, filled with clothes and food, and looks like it's ready to sail. On the boat, though, is a very angry man named Yoshimaru, I think is his name. Akira Takarada's on the boat, basically. And he wants them off and aims a shotgun at them, claiming that if they don't get off, he's going to put a cap in their ass. So, after some talking, he decides instead to let them stay on the boat overnight, and they, of course, sleep on the boat overnight. They wake up the next morning, and the boat is sailing. Akira Takarada, displeased, tries to get Rata to turn the boat around, but he refuses because he wants to go look for his brother. So instead, since Akira Takarada was going to leave anyway, he just decides to go with the flow. So we get a few scenes of the humans just doing stuff on the boat. Then all of a sudden, a storm hits, and a giant claw emerges from the sea and attacks the boat, destroying it and sending the humans overboard. They arrive on a seemingly deserted island in the South Pacific, and they wake up and go around seeing if there's anyone around. All they find is something a little bit scary. They find a bunch of soldiers who look pretty tough and pretty mean, guarding a military base on the island, and a bunch of boats one boat basically surrounding the island and spraying a strange liquid. So a bunch of stuff happens with the humans that I don't want to get into. Basically, they meet up with a native girl named Dio, who's apparently from Infant Island of all places, the island where Mothra is, and they learn that her people have been taken in as slaves of these military people to produce this liquid that protects them from the monster that sank Rata's boat. So the humans spend a good chunk of time thwarting the soldiers and staying alive and surviving and trying to stay alive. Then all of a sudden they discover that Godzilla is dwelling inside of a cave on the island, seemingly after his fight with Ghidorah at the end of Monster Zero, though that's not said, but I think we can assume that. And he just seems to be dwelling in that cave sleeping. So all the people were really scared, and they decided they're going to have to leave the cave just because, Godzilla might kill them. However, they attempt to sneak into the military base and find out what exactly is going on and seeing if there's a way that they can get off the island. Rather than that, they get caught by the soldiers, and one of them is captured, and one of them is Rata's the one who is... He tries to run away, gets his foot caught on a rope, and then he gets taken up by a weather balloon, which, coincidentally enough, takes him to Infant Island, where his brother washed ashore a month ago and is being nursed back to health by the Infant Islanders, and who are worshiping to Mothra, trying to wake her up because they want her to go to the island where the soldiers are to rescue their people from slavery. There's a lot of requiring monsters to wake up in this movie because Mothra needs to be woken up, and then the remaining people on the island, led by Akira Takarada, decide that they need to wake up Godzilla so that way he can destroy the military base, kill the monster Ebra, the giant lobster that sank their boat, so that way they can free the Infant Islanders and escape. What a brilliant idea, right? Well, it apparently is, because they use lightning to wake up Godzilla, and Godzilla does indeed fight Ebra, doesn't kill him, but does fight him and win, and then he starts to scare the soldiers on the island. There's a bunch of scenes in between this that I'm not going to get into. Basically, Rata finds his brother on Infant Island, and they go back to the island to free the Infant Islanders and save the remaining of Akira Takarada's group. So Godzilla attacks the military base and totally demolishes it. The soldiers realize they need to evacuate, but before they evacuate, they flip a switch which will blow up the entire island in a nuclear explosion. Yeah. So Godzilla begins to fight Ebra once again. Meanwhile, Mothra is waking up and starts to fly to the island to rescue the Infant Islanders who have been released by Godzilla, basically destroying the military base, and Akira Takarada's character and Yatta breaking into the cave where they're being held, and they start to build a net so that way when Mothra arrives on the island, they can hook up the net to Mothra, can all safely travel to Infant Island in the net. So while this is all going on, Godzilla continues to fight Ebra, and the soldiers attempt to escape. But apparently, the Infant Islanders created a phony batch of the yellow liquid they were using to thwart Ebra, and Ebra is not thwarted by them this time and destroys their boat, killing all the members of the Red Bamboo. Ebra is defeated by Godzilla, who rips off both of his arms, and Godzilla goes back to shore, and seeing Mothra thinks that she's there to fight him, and a little tiny fight is underway between Godzilla and Mothra. Godzilla just basically fires his atomic breath, and Mothra rams into him. It's over. Godzilla kind of looks around confused. Mothra flies away with our human cast safe in the net. The island is about to explode, but the humans, realizing that Godzilla did indeed help them escape, call out to him to jump off the island and escape safely. Apparently Godzilla hears them and does this. The island explodes, Godzilla and the human cast all escape safely, and we have a nice little wrap-up where Akira Takarada's character Yoshi promises to turn over a new leaf when he gets back to civilization, because apparently he robbed a bank before all this stuff happened. So, alright. So that's the plot of Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster. This feels just like an episode of a TV show, and not a good TV show. This feels like an episode of a cartoon. So I guess that, again, it seems like a good adaptation of the King Kong show, in that it feels like a cartoon story with a very two-dimensional plot. A lot of scenes of characters just escaping, and action and adventure and monster fights and sci-fi stuff, and dance numbers with the Infant Islander natives. It's just a very cartoony story, and it's not very developed, and this leads to the plot really dragging, and a lot of the human scenes lasting too long and leaving you bored. Even the monster scenes, which are for the most part entertaining, though the effects in this film aren't that great, the monster scenes themselves even drag. Godzilla's first fight with Ebra is painfully boring. All they do is knock around a rock for a few minutes, go underwater. We can't see their fight underwater that well. Godzilla blasts Ebra with his atomic breath, and then it's over. The other monster scenes are alright. Godzilla's fight with the giant condor is awful. You can't even see it. The giant condor comes out of nowhere, and it's just a giant bird. I mean, Godzilla has fought things much bigger and much stronger than that in the past. Then, of course, he fights a squadron of planes, which is a much more entertaining scene. But again, the problem is that we can't see anything. The problem with all the monster scenes in this movie is that we can't see anything that's going on. And Jun Fukuda just doesn't seem to know how to shoot it like Honda and Tsuburaya do. So it's a lot of really close-up and really shaky kind of monster fights, and they're not entertaining for it. Also, my final thing about the plot is, what the hell is the point of this plot? I mean, again, it feels like an episode of a TV series, in that it just kind of feels like a one-and-done story that has no impact on the main character, Godzilla. And at the end, he just seems to go off to sleep again. So this story has no impact on Godzilla himself, and since he's the main character, it just feels like a really one-and-done kind of story that isn't even that entertaining. So it's ultimately pointless. Also, let me just say this, the ending with Akira Takarada promising to turn over a new leaf, and all the stuff of them wanting to save Godzilla from being blown up, and all the people coming together to be saved by Mothra, it's really corny, and again, it feels like the ending of a TV show or a cartoon. Fine, I don't have a huge problem with it, but it's corny, and leads to the film not feeling like a Godzilla movie again. Again, Godzilla only had one out there sci-fi movie before this, Monster Zero, and even that didn't feel this corny and silly. That was a very serious sci-fi story. This is not that way. Again, this feels like an episode of a cartoon show or a TV series. So the ending being corny, it's just, again, it doesn't feel like a Godzilla film, and just, I just don't like it. That'll bring us into the human cast. The only two people I kind of like are Akira Takarada as the bank robber Yoshi, who, I know, I thought the same thing. Oh, no, I think it's Yashi. Alright, I'm going to say Yashi, because I don't want to confuse him with the green dinosaur. Akira Takarada as Yashi, he's extremely likable. It's very different from what he was doing with Fuji in Monster Zero, and what he was doing with Sakai in Mothra vs. Godzilla. Again, it proves that he's a very versatile actor, and that he can basically do whatever he has to be a leading man, and again, he is the perfect leading man, and he's fantastic in this movie. It's just that he has no one to play off of. He's a badass, and, you know, has these great lines, but again, it's just, he just doesn't have anything to play off of. So, he's great, but he ultimately doesn't have enough material to keep himself going. Akihiko Hirata is also in this film. It's kind of a reunion between them, because you know, they were both in, of course, Gojira. They only have one scene together, and I was just like, come on, do something epic just to kind of signify this reunion. There's nothing. The only kind of sort of reference to Gojira that I like is Akihiko Hirata's character, who he plays a great villain, by the way, wearing an eye patch, so I like that. But strangely enough, despite him being a great villain, Akihiko Hirata's character does not have a lot of screen time. He's only in a couple of scenes, and whenever he is in a scene, his presence is great, but he doesn't really do anything. He just kind of leads the soldiers, and he doesn't really do anything too significant. So he's great, just not on screen enough to be the thing that saves the movie. Otherwise, the rest of the human cast is fucking annoying. It's like having Akihiko Hirata and Akira Takarada in this movie. It's like bringing an atomic bomb to a paintball fight. I mean, it's like you've got these two great classic Godzilla actors, and they're in with these really annoying, like, TV actors who just, like, they're so annoying. And they all are very two-dimensional. They're a little stale. The only two with personality are annoying, which is the Rata's two friends, whose name escapes me, but their names escape me. But they're annoying, and they're kind of cowards, and nothing they have to say is very interesting. So except for Akira Takarada and Akihiko Hirata, the human cast is very much so annoying. And you just don't want to see them on screen. They're just very grating on the nerves. Overall, just the human cast is annoying. There are no themes or allegory in this movie, and again, that's not really a problem because this is a cartoon, just played in live action. And I don't have a problem with having no themes or allegory in this because it is just a cartoon, despite being a bad cartoon. It's not surprising to me that there's nothing, of basic Godzilla film allegory or themes. So it basically is just a plot-driven cartoon story. So nothing of thematic value here to analyze. So there's really nothing I can analyze about this film. I mean, there's some talk about atomic bombs, but nothing about it is developed. It's just basically, these people are bad because they're producing atomic bombs, so sure, why not? I'll buy it. But again, there's nothing thematic or allegorical to analyze in this film. Which will bring us into the monsters. I want to talk about Godzilla because Mothra and Ebirah have nothing really to bring to the story or the overall impact of the film. I'll talk about them briefly, but there's really nothing I have to say about them. Godzilla, on the other hand, he doesn't get any development in this movie, but his characterization is all over the place, and it all stems from the problem of he was supposed to be King Kong. And he gets some strange scenes in this film where he just doesn't feel like Godzilla. The one that sticks out to me and to a lot of G fans is the scene later on in the film, after he's been woken up, when the female lead, Dio, is trying to escape from some soldiers. She runs into Godzilla, and strangely enough, Godzilla shows a King Kong-esque interest in her and won't let her leave, and just kind of seems fascinated and almost infatuated with her. So it's weird, and I have nothing to say about it. It's just, you can very easily tell it was supposed to be Kong. So other strange things is just in the way Godzilla fights. There's a lot of him using rocks in this movie, which is a King Kong thing to do. He only uses his atomic breath a handful of times, and each time he does it, even then, it just doesn't feel like it's points where Godzilla would use it. When I was reading up on this movie a little bit before I did this review, and one thing that I never even thought of, but definitely makes sense, is Godzilla using rocks to destroy the Red Bamboo's base. He doesn't use his atomic breath at all, and mainly uses rocks to crush buildings, and there's this one scene that just drives me nuts when Godzilla runs into a power line, and of course he gets electrocuted, and we're not even going to get into the continuity of the high tension wires because, as we've seen with this series, it's all over the place with Godzilla's effects to electricity. It's all over the place, but basically, rather than just stepping over it, because he's like a good 50 feet taller than it, he uses a rock to bang down on the wire, cut it so that way he can get through. why? I mean, I guess it's kind of cool to see him do something so intricate, but he didn't have to do it. He could have just stepped right over it. So that's really stupid, and again, it's very clear that this was supposed to be Kong. And again, it drives me nuts as a Godzilla fan to go to see a Godzilla movie and he's acting like Kong, not like Godzilla, so I really wish they would have just scrapped this script altogether or just made it into a King Kong movie. Not that it would have been a good King Kong movie, but again, at least it wouldn't have been this bad, because just replacing Kong with Godzilla just does not work and leaves you scratching your head as someone familiar with the character. And really that's the core problem of Godzilla in this film, is that he was supposed to be Kong, so I'm not going to get into too much analysis of him beyond that. Otherwise, he is a badass at points. I mean, the part where he busts out of the cave is epic when he's bursting through the rocks and roaring, and there's this music that builds up by Masaru Sato, and the lightning is striking. It's just cool. But again, everything after that, he does not feel like Godzilla at all. The only thing I like about Godzilla, and this isn't even Godzilla himself, it's just the impact he has, is that the main human cast acknowledge that he's been both a hero and a villain in the past, and that they know if they, stick around when Godzilla wakes up that he'll kill them, but they still think that he'll come through for them in the end. So I like Godzilla's status as an anti-hero in this movie, so it's a good carry-on of what we had in Monster Zero, and I realize I've just been calling it Monster Zero this whole review, of Invasion of the Astro Monster and Ghidorah. So I like that carry-on. It's not developed enough, and ultimately it's just kind of pointless. So with all that said about Godzilla, again, he's just too much like Kong for the film's good. Let's get into Mothra and Ebirah. Since Mothra is only in a couple scenes, we'll talk about Ebirah first. Ebirah as a new Godzilla villain has no impact on me, at least. I think there are some people out there who are fans of him. I'm not personally. He's just a giant lobster, nothing special about him. He looks cool and the effects on him are great, but he just doesn't have any impact on me as a Godzilla fan, and has nothing on other Godzilla monsters. I mean, he's got no shit on Ghidorah. And his fight with Godzilla is just really disappointing, and he doesn't really get anything about him that defines him as something special in the Godzilla franchise. He just comes off as a giant creature that Godzilla has to fight. So, he kind of feels like a King Kong monster in that regard, in that a lot of monsters or dinosaurs or whatever that pop up in Kong films don't have a lot of personality to them and just pop up to give Kong something to fight. He feels a lot like that, and I suppose this being originally a King Kong movie, that's why he is that way, but this being a Godzilla movie, him having no personality is disappointing. Which will bring us into Mothra. She's only awake in one scene. Again, there's a lot of waiting for monsters to wake up in this movie, and she waits till the last 10 minutes of the movie. I like the fact that Mothra's all grown up in this movie. The fact is that she was still a caterpillar in Ghidorah, and that now she's a full-grown adult and looks just like her mother. So, cool. It's good to see Mothra all grown up, but again, she only has one scene, and it's basically just typical Mothra stuff, so nothing special about her. Although it's good to see her as a grown-up. This will bring us into more generally the effects. They're pretty bad. They're not terrible, though. There are a couple of shots that are good. A lot of the double projection shots are, again, good. It's just a carryover of the progression we had in Invasion of the Astro Monster. Godzilla looks terrible. I hate this Godzilla design, especially in this movie. They used the same design in Invasion of the Astro Monster, and I forgot to cover this in when I reviewed that film yesterday, but they used the same Godzilla suit, and for some reason, I don't know if it's just the way Jun Fukuda shoots in this movie, but doesn't work. The thing looks terrible. The way Godzilla stands is clunky, and overall, he's just hard to look at. He looks like a guy in a rubber suit. And again, it's all in the way it's shot. He didn't look that way in Invasion of the Astro Monster. And it's not even that this suit is falling apart from being a double-year suit. It's just the fact of it's shot improperly. So criticism on Fukuda for that. The suit just looks terrible. And I don't know why, but the way it stands bugs me. He looks like he's not supposed to have a tail for some reason. Like, just the way he stands, he looks like he's about to trip over his own tail. And looks like he's trying to look taller than he actually is. I don't know how to describe it, but the suit is just awful. And I don't like the design, I don't like the way it's shot, just the effects in this movie are not that good. They all look rather fake, and I hate to say that, but I think it's just because this movie was rushed and probably didn't have an enormous budget, but the only scene with Godzilla fighting a monster that I like is his first fight with Ebra, and not that the fight's any good, it's just the effects look good. And that might be because it's shot at night and because the rain makes it look epic. But the Godzilla suit looks okay in that scene. His fight with Ebra is lame, but at least they both look fine. But I think that's just because it's at night and during a rainstorm. So, again, the effects in this movie are disappointing and ultimately feel very rushed. And I hate Godzilla's design. The scene where he fights the planes, they look like planes out of the Gamera films because they look like toys. And I don't love that. His fight with them is okay. Ultimately, it's nothing special. Again, just they look like toys, so I don't love that. I mean, this is frickin' E.G. Sabraya. This is a guy who did some incredible World War II miniature effects back before he even did the original Gojira. In fact, I don't know if I ever told this story, but he once did a movie where his recreation of the attack on Pearl Harbor was so convincing that American occupation groups were convinced that it was spy footage of the actual attack, and they blacklisted Sabraya. So, he's an amazing miniatures guy, but I think it's just because he's rushed in this, and he didn't have as much of a budget, so the planes look like toys. I don't have a lot to say about the music score. It's Masaru Sato's second Godzilla score. It's a lot more memorable than the stuff he did for Raids Again. It's got this very strange, almost like James Bond quality to it. But it's fine. I like it. It's very catchy, which I like. And it's a big step up from what he did with Raids Again. And he's starting to differentiate himself from Ifukube, so I like that. And this is ultimately feels kind of a prototype for the music he's going to do later on in films like Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla. So the music score is good. It's a little strange, and I ultimately think that's what leads to it being so memorable. So I like the music score. It works for this material. With all that said, this movie sucks. I'm sorry. I really just don't like it. It's painfully boring. Godzilla in it is terrible. It's just ultimately boring. The plot is really Saturday morning cartoon, which I don't like. And again, just phoning in Godzilla for Kong is just not the way to go, and makes this not feel like a Godzilla movie. And since we are doing this as a Godzilla review series, I have to give this movie a very low score of 1.5 out of 5. It's just terrible. Skip it. You don't ever have to see it. As I said earlier, it has no impact on Godzilla's character or the rest of the franchise. The only two things I really like about it, or three things I guess, are Akira Takarada, Akihiko Hirata, and Masaru Sato's music score. So that's really all that's good about it. Skip it. It's not worth watching. So you can move on to some of the better films in the franchise. It is a little bit of a nostalgic guilty pleasure for me. I mean, when I was watching it for this review, I definitely had some memories flashing back to when I first saw this as a kid, and in fact, this was one of my first Godzilla films, but I didn't really even like it back then, so I had some nostalgia for it in that the only reason I really liked watching it was because I felt like a kid again, so it has that for me, but again, it just doesn't save this movie for me because it's just ultimately so bad. So 1.5 out of 5 for me. Skip it. No need to see it. So that'll about do it for this review of Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster. Thank you very much for watching. And I'll see you guys tomorrow on Godzilla Palooza when Godzilla takes quite another big step for his character, and we're starting to come down on the some of the finales of the Showa series. when tomorrow we take a look at potentially one of the silliest Godzilla films ever made, but somehow that kind of works for it, but we'll talk about that tomorrow when we review The Son of Godzilla. I'll see you guys tomorrow for that review. Thank you very much for watching, and sayonara.